Hello all out there in YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. So, I am exhausted. I am very, very tired. I am so sorry for not having a usual review for this week, or a better video. Last week was just an incredibly busy week. This next couple of weeks are going to be busy, and I've been running all over the place, a lot of dogs to take care of, a lot of dogs to walk out in the heat, and I finally had a chance to sit down, and the whole week just kind of caught up to me, so I am very, very, very tired. So I didn't have time to do a proper video for this week. I didn't have time to watch much of anything this week, much less prepare for a review, but I still wanted to get a video out to you all, so I figured let's do this simple little rambly video, and hope you guys enjoy it. So, I know that I am the last person here on YouTube to talk about In a Violent Nature. A lot of people have already talked about In a Violent Nature, said their thoughts. You've probably heard from so many other YouTubers talking about this film, and so I decided at the very last minute to give my thoughts on this little movie. Because, what can I say, I am terrible at keeping up with trends. So, I actually watched this movie a few weeks ago. I finally had a chance to sit down and see it. I know it's a very divisive slasher movie. There are people who love it, there are people who hate it. And I was curious to check this one out because divisive movies are interesting to watch, to see which side of the fence you would come on. And I gotta say, after I finally sat down and watched it, I hated this movie. I have no issue talking about movies I dislike on this channel, but just with the way my brain works, I would rather talk about a movie I do like and I want to introduce to people than I would talking about a movie I dislike. You know, I like talking about things that I like, and I get excited when I get to introduce that to somebody else. But I have no problem talking about stuff I don't like, and I'm trying to do that a little more. It's just that the thing about me is, one of the reasons I don't talk about movies I dislike a lot on this channel is because I try to avoid things that I think I won't like. If there's a movie that comes out and it seems like the majority of people are saying it's bad, or if I check some stuff out and it seems like I'm not going to like it, then I'm not going to waste my time on that. You know, it's like, a lot of people out there, they value their money and they value their time, and nobody wants to waste their time and money on something that they might not enjoy. They'd rather take a chance with something that has a better chance of them enjoying it. But then you have a movie like In a Violent Nature, which is so divisive, and you're curious to check it out because you wonder which side of the aisle you're going to fall on when it comes to this movie. And I am one of those people that did not like this film. Now, this is going to be a bit of a rant in this video, and if I get rambly, I apologize, because like I said, I've been running around like a maniac for a bit, and my brain is a tad fried, so if I am incoherent in this video, I apologize very much. But anyway, before I get into what I dislike about this movie, I am going to talk about some positivity about this film, and give this movie some praise. Because I know there are fans of this movie out there, and whether it's In a Violent Nature or any movie I don't like, I am happy when people are able to enjoy that film. If you're able to enjoy a movie I dislike, I am happy for you. You can keep watching that movie. I don't have to watch it again. I never like to knock people for what they like in terms of movies, TV, books, pop culture, all that stuff. You're gonna like what you're gonna like. It may be in line with others, it may not be in line with others. And of course, with a divisive movie like this, yeah, there's a good chance it's not going to align with somebody else. So, I do want to say some positive stuff about this film because it is an independent film, and I do like to praise independent cinema in a way. Doesn't mean I won't criticize independent cinema when I come across it, but, well, hey, what are you going to do? I do respect the filmmakers for what they were trying to do. This is a slasher movie, and when making a slasher movie, it's hard to do something outside of the slasher genre. It's hard to do something different in the slasher genre because so many slasher movies are like other slasher movies. One of the reasons that slasher fans enjoy the slasher genre is because of it's a comfort genre in many ways. We know what we're going to get and we know what we're going to expect. So after a long, hard day of work, if we want to watch a horror movie, a slasher movie is a good way to go because we know what to expect. But of course, even though a lot of us love the slasher genre, we do want to see something different here and there. We do praise originality. That's how we are. And In a Violent Nature does try to do something different. So, this has been a buzz in the horror genre for a long time before it came out. It's a slasher movie that's like a Friday the 13th-esque slasher movie. We're following this Jason Voorhees-esque killer, and that's exactly it. We are literally following him. The whole movie is from the killer's point of view, or at least most of the movie is from the killer's point of view. We're following the killer around as he's going from victim to victim, from place to place in this area. And yes, the whole movie literally follows this Jason Voorhees-esque killer. And the movie creates its own lore around this new slasher villain. The killer is a guy named Johnny. He was killed years ago, and his soul, I guess, is basically connected to his mother's locket, and if somebody steals that locket or removes that locket, he will come back from the dead. That's what happens, and then he goes around killing a bunch of campers. And the movie does look pretty. I mean, the area that they decided to film in is very nice looking, and it is, at times, nice to look at the forest around this guy as he's walking through the woods towards his next victim, and of course, many people have praised the kills in this movie, and there are some fantastic kills in this movie. I've heard people say that these are the most wild kills they've ever seen in a horror movie, and I'm going to admit I have seen wilder. I have dug into the horror genre for a long time. I will say these are some great kills for a slasher movie. Original standout kills in a slasher movie. Yes, these kills do stand out, but I have seen some crazy kills. I've seen Society, where you see someone get turned inside out. I've seen Frankenhooker, which has some wild kills there. You have a bunch of hookers exploding from super crack. So I have seen my fair share of wild, crazy kills in horror movies, but In a Violent Nature does have some good kills. Now, I am going to get into some spoiler territory in this video because in order to talk about what annoyed me about this film, I'm going to have to talk about some spoilery stuff. But anyway. So, yes, as a slasher movie, it has some great kills. The problem is everything around those kills, and everything around the kills is what ruins the movie for me and has ruined the movie for many people. I know a lot of people have already talked about this film, and I'm sure I'm going to repeat the issues that many people have had with this movie, but I'm just going to give my 2 cents with the whole thing, just because that's what I want to talk about this week. So, going into my issues and getting into my rant. In a Violent Nature is an example of what I hate most in movies. Things that bug me the most about movies, whenever I criticize a film, whenever I don't like a movie, whenever I'm disappointed in a movie, these arguments I make all the time. I make these arguments all the time. Sorry for the shakiness in my voice, like I said, I'm tired. But my 2 biggest pet peeves when it comes to any movie, not just the horror genre, is when the filmmakers fill their movie with padding, and when the filmmakers do not take advantage of the idea that they have. Like, they have an idea, but they do nothing with it. And the reason those 2 are pretty much the ones I hate the most is because they're connected to each other in a way. Like, a filmmaker not taking advantage of their idea will fill their movie with padding. In a Violent Nature is essentially padding the movie. And that's what is so weird about In a Violent Nature, because, okay, yes, the movie does have its idea, and it does, in a way, take advantage of its idea, but its idea is essentially the padding. The whole movie, as many people have stated, is following the killer as he's going from victim to victim, and a good chunk of this movie, a very good chunk of this movie, is just following this guy around as he's walking through the woods. That is padding, and that's what I talk about, and that's what I get annoyed with when it comes to padding in movies. You see this all the time in films that the filmmakers, they didn't put enough in the script to stretch the movie out to a feature-length film, so they fill their movie with padding. And of course, I've given examples of this before, but I'm going to give an example of it again. Padding is when you see people doing something in excruciating detail, and they're just simple everyday activities, just like simple boring activities shown with excruciating detail. Like, the example I like to give is, somebody has a meeting with somebody in an office building, and instead of just the filmmaker showing the person walking into the meeting, they have to stretch that out. So they show the guy or the character drive into the parking lot, get out of their car, they show the guy walk towards the front door, they show the guy enter the building, and then they cut to inside of the building where the guy walks to the elevator, he pushes the button, he waits for the elevator. Sometimes they might show us what's going on in the elevator, sometimes they mercifully won't, but then they'll cut to the next scene where he gets off the elevator and then he walks to the meeting room. That's not something we enjoy seeing. I mean, again, boring activities shown with way too much detail. And then, of course, you have, which is the greatest offense to me, is people walking. Woods are a very common setting in independent cinema because you don't have to get any permits to film in the area. It's easy to film in the woods. And so you see this in a lot of independent, low-budget, micro-budget films. There's a lot of scenes of people walking in the woods, and that is always something that I get annoyed by. A slasher movie that I can't stand is Don't Go in the Woods Alone. Now, this movie does have a cult following. It has some fantastic kills, but so much of the movie is just people walking around the woods. It doesn't matter how good the kills are in that situation. If I am so bored between the kills that the movie, doesn't matter how long the movie is, the movie feels like an eternity to get through, then it doesn't matter how good the kills are. Everything around it is so goddamn mind-numbing that the movie becomes a slog. And that's what we have here in A Violent Nature. Just so many scenes of walking. And again, the scenery is very pretty, and okay, I can understand people getting lost in the sounds of the wood, getting into sort of this meditative state. But still, so much of the movie is this guy walking around the woods, just watching this guy walking. And here's the thing, okay, the scenery's beautiful, but if I want beautiful scenery, I can go for a walk by myself. I love going for walks. It's one of my favorite things. I mean, my job involves a lot of dog walking, which I'm very lucky. It allows me to get out of the house and go into these beautiful areas with these dogs, but I also like taking opportunities to go for walks by myself, just going for walks in the woods. And it's great, it's calming. I love going for walks in the woods. But you know what I don't like? Watching other people going for walks. It's like, okay, people like football, people like watching football, but you know what's not entertaining? Watching people watch football. You're not even really focusing on the game, you're focusing on the people watching the game. And that's something that a lot of people are annoyed by, because when they go into a movie, they're not only spending their money on the film, and okay, even if you have a streaming service, yes, okay, technically you're not paying for every film, but you are paying for that streaming service, so there is money involved. So you're investing money into a movie, and you're also investing time into a movie. And people do value their time. It's like, if you're watching a movie where not much is happening, if you're watching a film where it's mostly just people walking or doing mundane activities, or just watching people doing something uninteresting while you're waiting to get to the meat of the film, yeah, people are going to get pissed off with that, because yes, again, they're not just wasting money, they're also wasting time. It's like, I can spend my money and my time watching someone walk through the woods, or I can go for my own walk and it's free. And what's so disappointing for me is I can see what the filmmakers were going for here. I can see a version of this movie that could work if things were done in a more interesting way. Now, something I am very clear about is, like, I always praise good pacing in movies, because good pacing means no padding, or little padding, or well-hidden padding. I do not compare slow pacing to fast pacing, I compare good pacing to bad pacing, because slow movies can still have good pacing. There's a way to make slower moments more entertaining. You know, like that scenario I gave early on about a guy, going to an office meeting and we're watching him go to into the building and all that stuff. You can make that more interesting, like maybe a narration going on in his head as he's going through, the situation. Or even better, instead of having it be one character going to the office meeting, have it be two characters go to the office meeting and they're talking to each other as they're going. There's some interesting dialogue, maybe some little hints of things to come in the film, character development. It's like padding can be made interesting. You can hide the padding in interesting stuff with some interesting dialogue or some interesting camera work or some good music, something. But again, a lot of the scenes are just this guy walking through the woods with the sound of nature around him, which can be calming, but again, we're just watching this guy. And there are plenty of examples of... I can think of examples of movies that take place in the woods that are mostly people walking in the woods, and it's still intriguing. We're still drawn into the story. The Blair Witch Project is a perfect example of this. Now, The Blair Witch Project is not my favorite found footage movie, and there are, I've compared this to other movies in the past that were made with less money, but I do still think The Blair Witch Project is good, and most of that is people walking around the woods. We never see the witch in the movie. We never really see an entity terrorizing these people in The Blair Witch Project. But the movie is filmed in an interesting way, and there's dialogue between the characters as they're going around the woods. Now, there are parts towards the end of the movie where we have some scenes where they're just walking in silence or sitting in silence, but that's... one, it's not too long. Two, it is handled in an interesting way. And three, this is after we've been with these characters for so long in these woods. They're hungry, they have run out of food, so they're hungry, they're tired, they've lost one of the characters, so there's only two left, and something's hunting them. They're so exhausted, and you feel that exhaustion in this scene, but throughout a majority of the movie, there's something interesting going on, like there are scenes at night where they hear something going on in the woods, and they're going around trying to get a better glimpse at what's happening around them. Or, like I said, just dialogue between the characters as they're walking through the woods. So yes, The Blair Witch Project, a movie where the whole film, or at least 99.9% of the film, is these characters wandering around the woods, but it's handled in an interesting way because the characters interact with each other as they're walking through the woods. They're talking to each other while walking through the woods. It's not just the characters walking through the woods, it's walking through the woods with dialogue, with interaction, with, like them finding weird voodoo symbols hanging from the trees. And I think that's what I find so frustrating about In a Violent Nature, because one of the things I always do is I look at the budget of the movie and I see what the filmmakers did with that budget. And from what I've seen in the sources that I've looked at, In a Violent Nature had a budget of $3 million. Now, $3 million is not a huge budget, but it's a decent budget for a slasher movie and a horror movie. I have seen movies with much smaller budgets that do so much more. Like, this is a film made with $3 million. Last week, I posted a video, a trash review, where I talked about Father's Day, and that's a movie that was made with $10,000. And the filmmakers did so much in that movie. They did so much with so little. I talked about At Dawn They Sleep, which was made for $7,000, and that's a vampire action movie. $7,000, and they have car stunts in that movie. They have cars flipping over in that movie. They have some really good stuff in those films. But people don't really give those movies a chance because they have a small budget. Audiences focus so much on the fact that the movies have a small budget instead of what the filmmakers did with that budget, so they don't give these movies a chance. That's one of the main reasons why I started the series Trash Reviews. So I see films like that not getting as much attention, made with such small budgets, and then I see a movie like In a Violent Nature made for $3 million. Again, not a huge budget when you compare it to other films, but $3 million is a budget that micro-budget filmmakers would kill to have. And these filmmakers have that, and what they did with most of the movie is show a character wandering around the woods. It's like, for the first few minutes, I was with it. I was like, okay, what are they going to do with this? But again, most of what they did with this was the character wandering around. And there are some sequences where they cut to the victims of this film, which aren't the main characters. And the dialogue's not interesting and the camera work isn't interesting. Like, there's a scene where they're sitting at a campfire and the camera's just between them, just spinning around them. And that can work in certain circumstances, but here it's just not done in an interesting way. There's a scene where a woman is drowned by the killer, and so the woman gets pulled underwater, and then we just focus on that shot for God knows how long of just the water. Eventually she bobs to the top, but it takes a long time for her to bob to the top. Now, I do respect the fact that they handle the drowning in a realistic way, because, yeah, people don't just drown right away, but, again, that's not something that's interesting to look at for that long. You could have done this in a more interesting way, even with the guy just wandering around the woods. Just instead of just making it him wandering around, you again film it from different angles, film it from, maybe have an inner monologue in his head, you know, like maybe like his mother talking to him or something. There have been slasher movies that follow the killer. Now, I understand Maniac is considered more of a serial killer movie, but it's always been categorized with the slasher genre. And that's a movie where it follows the killer. But if you want two slasher movies that follow the killer, you have Fade to Black and Silent Night, Deadly Night. Fade to Black is a movie about this guy who's obsessed with movies, and he eventually starts killing people, and he kills them in movie-themed ways, dressing up as characters from his favorite movies and killing his victims in that way. And again, that's a movie that follows the killer. Silent Night, Deadly Night, a Christmas slasher movie, and I love Silent Night, Deadly Night. I think it's a great holiday slasher film about this kid who saw his parents get murdered by a guy dressed up as Santa Claus, was sent to an orphanage where he was abused by the Mother Superior, and this concept of punishment was hammered into his brain, and then when he's an adult, he works at a toy store and is forced to dress up as Santa Claus around Christmas, snaps, and goes on a killing spree. That's a slasher movie that follows the slasher. So it has been done before, but it's never been done with this extent of a Jason Voorhees-esque killer, following around a Jason Voorhees-esque killer, following around a silent slasher film. And I do think this idea could have worked if they just did it in a somewhat different way. Don't just focus on this guy walking around, or maybe if you are going to focus on this guy walking around, filming it in some kind of interesting way. They tried something here, and I respect the fact that they tried something different. I would rather filmmakers try something different and fail than play it safe and have the movie be just meh, So, yep, that is my rant for this week. I know so many other people have already talked about In a Violent Nature, and I apologize for just doing this simple ranty video today. Like I said, it was very busy and I'm very tired. I'm hoping to be able to get back to a regular filming schedule next week. We'll see what happens, but there will be a video next week, I promise, regardless of what it is. What are your thoughts on In a Violent Nature? If you disliked it, by all means put it down below. If you liked it, tell me your thoughts down below. Like I said, I have no problem with civil discussions, civil arguments, and civil disagreements. We all like different movies, and I would love to hear your perspective of it if you're a fan of In a Violent Nature. I would love to know what you think about this. Anyway, yeah, so that is my very ranty video because I was so tired that I thought the perfect pick-me-up would be rage. I hope this didn't get too rambly. I hope I didn't get incoherent in here. I hope you liked it. I hope I made sense in my ramblings. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I know there are so many other people you could be watching on YouTube, but it does truly mean a lot to me that you take time out of your day to watch my stuff. It does truly mean a lot to me. Thank you so much for that. But on that note, I hope you're all having a good day. I hope you all have a good week. We'll hopefully be back on track next week. And until next time, this is the Maniac, here to remind you that the Grindhouse will never die.